Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel, and today in this video we are going to look at what is Langgraph and how it can help us create robust agentic solutions where we have complete control over how the agent would behave in certain conditions and how we can branch off at different situations based on the user input to create a great user experience. In this video, we are going to see how our chat bot can, at the first stage, detect the intent of the user, and then based off these graphs and the nodes and the conditions, we are able to divert the user to a specific kind of flow that we have already defined so that the user gets to interact with different kinds of LLMs and get different kinds of responses. So if this is something that interests you, let's get started and understand how Langgraph can help us build such a solution. So I have this Jupyter notebook where I would create the entire solution and we will iterate through it and understand how things are building. And I have a working code, so most of the time I will be kind of copy pasting things, and I will try to explain you what I have done so that it makes more sense. For this tutorial purpose, we will need some packages which I will paste here. So let's go over them. I'm installing .env. This is primarily so that I'm able to load .env file. I have my grok that I'm using. You can see I'm using LangChain grok, LangChain and Langgraph. Okay, so the LangChain grok allows me to get the chat grok module and use the chat functions of the grok. Okay, I'm using the grok LLMs. Then I have LangChain, obviously that is required, and the Langgraph. Okay, so I'll just do install. I will select my existing virtual environment and do run. Now I already have these packages installed, so that should not be a problem. But yeah, it should not take you more than a minute or so, maybe at max. Okay, so now I have these packages installed. We will need to import certain things from them. So let me add that as well. What am I doing? I have a state graph. Obviously, there are different ways of creating a graph, and you can create a simple graph. No problem with that. You can see a very good example of that using a weather app. Okay. However, maybe I will drop a link of that article below in the description. But the thing is, whenever you are creating any kind of graph, right, and you are trying to decide a flow in your entire graph, you will need some kind of memory or state so that you are able to decide how to route things and how to store some value so that different nodes are able to behave in certain way, right? So you need that state, and that's why we are using here a state graph, and the end is basically I would say a shorthand so that we are able to define that this is the end of the graph, because we will go through defining each nodes of a graph. Nodes are basically all these components, and then there's our edges. Edges are how the flow is going to happen, so we will have to use them. Then I have my grok. I'm importing the chat grok from there. Typedict is used for the state graph that I will create. I don't need the other one, annotate. The .env is primarily so that I'm able to get my env value of my grok API key and the OS. Okay, so let me run that. Now let me create an instance of my LLM model. Okay, so here what I did is I did a load .env, so my env variables are now available, and then I said that my grok API key is os.get env grok API key. It's that simple. Okay, and then I instantiated a instance of the chat grok. I am using the llama 3 model, and my API key is this. Okay, this is good enough. And if you see, for example, I think if I do model.invoke, okay, hello, how are you? Perfect. It gives you an response from my LLM. You can see the kind of tokens that I have used and quite a few things. You get the point, right? So let me delete that. So now we have our LLM model instance. What is the next step? So the next step is, why don't we declare or create our state graph? Okay, so I'll come over here and I'll paste the code and I will try to explain you what this does. So I've created a class called graph state, okay, and it takes a typed dictionary, and in that what I'm saying is there is question, intent, and answer. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm expecting that in my entire graph workflow, I need these three variables. So I'll have the question, which basically is the question that the user is asking. Then, based on the question, I will try to get the intent of the user. And by the intent, I mean whether the user is trying to, let's just say, get talking about order status or product recommendation, or maybe he is asking something which is very generic. Okay, we are handling these three situations for now. So I have created those three variables. If you feel that in your workflow you need more data points, you can add it to your graph. State. Okay, so I have this class which is called graph state, takes a type dictionary, and these are the three things. Okay, as simple as that. You just need to do this. Once we go through the state, we will understand. Now the next step is we define the way we can detect the intent. Okay, so what is the code for that? So here I have the intent detection node. Okay, intent detection node, what it is doing, it's a function, it's a definition, and it will get the state. Okay, you need to understand that every node of a graph will automatically get the state if it is a state graph. Okay, so I'm expecting the state to be available to me. So as I said, the question is something which I'll get from the state. Okay, now I have a prompt. You saw that I was able to invoke the model, right? So if you see, I'm invoking that, but here is my prompt. I'm saying that classify the intent of this question into one of the three categories: order status, product recommendation, general. The question is here, and I'm additionally saying return only the intent category name. Okay, because I want only one word over here, nothing else. So I invoke the LLM model, I get the response, I put that in my intent. This is the state variable, and then I'm returning the state. So every node, what it does is it does something and then it returns the state. So you only have the state to work with between each node. Okay, if you're working with 1, 2, 3 nodes, doesn't matter, you get the state, so you have to work with your state only. So this is something which I have created. Now this is the intent detection. Then I need to have a handler for my order status, product recommendation, and a general one. Okay, so I'll add those three definitions. All right, here is the list of three definitions. I have order status. If my This is the order status function. What it does is it just sets the state's answer to be please provide your order ID to check the status. Okay, that's about it right now. We are not going into much complex things. If the node is get recommendation, the answer is please specify what type of product you're looking for. That's about it. And if we see for some reason that we have a very general kind of a question from the user which is not a recommendation or an order status, what we do is we try to send it to the LLM and say do whatever best you want. Okay, so if you see, I take the question. Okay, question is the state question. Okay, this is where I'm accessing the state for a specific value. Then I again invoke my LLM, my model, and I pass the question. So it is as good as the example that I show where I said, how are you today? Right? So I get the response, and then I put it in my answer, because as I said, inside a node's code, what we get is the state. Okay, so I put it there and I return the state. So all these definitions, if you see, are doing the same thing. Either they are, I mean, at the end, they are setting a value in the state, and that's about it. Okay. Now, what next? Well, this is where we define our workflow. And by workflow, what I mean is the graph. So if you see the code over here, I have a variable called workflow. Okay, I find that more, I would say, apt or more accurate to define what we have over here. And then I'm instantiating state graph and I'm passing my graph state. Okay, so they may sound a little confusing, and I saw most of the code doing this, so I'm just following the pattern. State graph, what is it? The state graph is something which we are importing from Langgraph's graph. Okay, this is an instance of state graph. If I click over here, you can see it's a class, a graph node whose nodes communicate by reading and writing to a shared state. Okay, and this is important. Who communicate by reading and writing to a shared state. Okay, so we have a state graph, and to that we pass the state. And state is something which I have defined over here. It's again a class with a typed dictionary of these three things. Oops. Okay, now because it's a graph, it will have nodes. So I have 4 nodes over here. First is detect intent. Then I have order status, I have recommendation, and I have general answer. Now, all these nodes also are referring to their defined functions over here. Okay, because what we are doing is we are saying that in this entire graph, each node represents this function. So whenever a user is going through that node, right, they are primarily activating that function. Okay, and I'm also saying that in this entire graph, the detect intent is the entry point. This is where things would start with. Okay, so I create this and I get a value, which means the graph, the workflow has been created, but it is not the end. We have only defined the node and we have defined the entry point as well. Now the next step is something called as the routing logic, and I'll first paste the code and I'll try to explain you why this is required. So now you see you have get intent, and then we have these three nodes which will be triggered based on something from the get intent, and that something is being defined using this route based on intent. So how are we doing it? If you see, even this function somehow gets the state. Okay, understood. Now what I do is I get the intent from the state. Why? Because if you see in my get intent, what I'm primarily doing is setting the intent. Okay, so the detect intent function, when it will be called, its primary responsibility is to give me the intent. Now, based on the intent, I'm saying that if the intent is order status, return order status. If it is product recommendation, return product recommendation. It may sound a little verbose, but I'll show you why this is there. Okay, so if it is order status or product recommendation, this is what it is. Otherwise, return general answer. Okay, and now so this is the routing logic, and now I will add a conditional edge to my graph. The question will come obviously is, what is a conditional edge? Well, this is the syntax that I am at. Like I added workflow.add node, workflow.send entry point. I have workflow.add conditional edge. The conditions are on detect intent. It is based on what I will get from this route based on intent function. Okay, I'll get something out of it, and this is where the state is being passed. So I have my node, which is detect intent. The conditional edges will be based on this method's return value, and I'm saying that when my value is order status, add this node. If my value is product recommendation, add this node. If you see, my node name over here is recommendation. I have kept it as one anomaly in this naming convention so that you understand. Recommendation means this is the name of the node, and this is what is being returned by route based on intent. Okay, so the left hand side is the value, or the condition, and this is the node where we are routing it to. Okay, this is how the left right works. And obviously, if I return general answer, then I return it to the general answer node. All these left ones, if you see order status, product recommendation, general answer, they are based on these values. Okay, because this is the intent that I'm getting. This intent is where I am building my logic. Okay, that's about it. This is done. Now I have my graph. I need to end it, and I can print to see what the graph looks like. So let's do that. So this is the code. I'm saying that these are the three edges: order status, and it then connects to end. Recommendation connects to end. General answer connects to end. I did a workflow.compile, and now if I do app, can you see? This is my entire graph visually. So I start with a detect intent, then it can branch to either product recommendation, order status, or general answer. And from all these three nodes, they go to end. Okay, that's about it. So this is the graph that we have created. I am able to control the entire flow based on the detect intent, and that's how they will be ending. I can do a lot more complicated graphs, like if it is recommendation, then do this and maybe this or this. Like if it is recommendation, if it is for products, or maybe if it is for jewelry, do this and then end. If it is for electronics, then do this and then end. Multiple things can happen. Right now we are keeping things simple. Okay, and we have quite a few things, but we haven't seen our code run, right? Let's try to see how we can do that. Now, to run our code, if you see, I am expecting that this first node, which is this detect intent, has a question. How do we do that? Well, so this is my definition called run graph. It takes the question, okay, and then what I'm doing is I'm doing app.invoke. App.invoke is nothing but what I created just now, workflow.compile, right? So I'm invoking that, and I am passing this typed dictionary. Why? Because if you see, my state graph is using graph state, and that graph state is nothing but the typed dictionary which I have created over here. This is the class, right? So I need to define those three things over here, and I have done that. My question is the question that will come as a parameter to run graph. My intent is empty, my answer is empty, and then whatever I am getting as a result, right, I just return that. All right, so my function, which will be I would say starting the conversation with this agent, right, is ready. Let's try it out with a few use cases. I have 4 questions. Question 1: what are some good laptops for programming? Where is my order? What is the best phone to buy? What is the capital of France? Let's start with that. So I have a loop over here. For every question, I do result equals run graph, and then I'm printing the question, the results, intent, and the answer. Okay, so the first question is, what are some good laptops for programming? My intent is product recommendation, which is correct because my prompt says that classify the intent of this question into one of the three categories. So product recommendation, correct. And because it is recommendation, it says please specify what type of product you are looking for. And if you see, my first answer is that. Similarly, for where is my order, it detected that my order status is the intent. This is where the LLM is coming into picture. And this is the answer for the handle order status. If I go over here somewhere, yeah, this is order status. Please provide your ID. Now, the one which is more generic in nature, what is the capital of France? It said it is general, and then the LLM used its own knowledge to say that the capital of France is Paris, because this is not something which I have added in my code. So as you can see, in a very controlled manner, you are able to divert the user to specific nodes in your graph, and you are able to do certain kinds of things which that particular function is strictly trying to do. Now, why? See, you may have, an agentic solution where not necessarily your one LLM will be able to do everything, right? You will have certain LLMs which are very good at a particular type of task, maybe, a mathematical calculations or something like that. Some of them are good at maybe, getting information from a RAG system and presenting it to you, things like that. So this whole agentic solution, this Langgraph, in this visual way, if you see, right, the user starts interaction, and then through code you are able to decide the flow of that user, and you are able to guide him through the proper nodes to the end result. And that's where this beautiful graph comes into picture and allows you a lot of control on how you want to go through your entire code. So yeah, that's what I wanted to cover in this video in terms of Langgraph. I hope this makes sense to you and you are able to visualize what are the different ways you can use it. This was definitely a very simpler version of how you can start with Langgraph. I would say that this is a lot to digest. Go through the code, understand each and every nuance. If you have questions, comment below and I'll be more than happy to answer those. And yeah, once we have a good picture of the graph, maybe with enough responses, I will create a subsequent video where we are handling a much more complex graph. So that's about it, guys. Hope you like this video. If you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.